Welcome, 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 beautiful people, to today's episode of the Thrive Careers Podcast, where we explore the key elements that help professionals build thriving careers. I'm your host, Olajumoke Fatoki, and today we are diving into the incredible power of mentorship with a truly inspiring guest, Dr. Deborah Heiser, an applied developmental psychologist, TEDx speaker, a consultant, author, and founder of the Mentor Project. Today, we will uncover the human drive to mentor, the impact of the Mentor Project, and practical steps for building meaningful mentorship relationships. Dr. Heiser, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely. All right, to get us started, do you want to tell us why you started the Mentor Project?
I started the Mentor Project because it was really by accident. I was talking to people about why they mentor. And so many people were saying, and these were like top people in their fields, were saying they didn't have anybody to connect with to mentor. And they wanted to, they just didn't know how to connect with people. And I realized, wow, it's true. There are so many people out there who, it would be awkward to say, hey, can I mentor you to some stranger? You can't do that in a park with kids. This is a real, true problem. And here we are saying to so many people, hey, go find a mentor. And there are mentors saying, hey, I'd love a mentee. And I saw that disconnect. And so we started the Mentor Project with just a couple of people. And the real desire was to get Bill Cheswick, who was one of the fathers of the firewall. He did all kinds of amazing innovations. And he said, I'm getting ready to retire from Bell Labs and I'm going to move to a farm. I'm not going to have any access to students of any age. And this is making me feel like I'm going to be irrelevant and not very helpful, and that all of my knowledge is going to go to waste. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is like burning down libraries every time, somebody isn't able to mentor. So we got Bill into some schools and we thought, okay, well, this is it. This is fun. We're having a good time. And then we moved from 10 people to 60 to 80 to 100 a year because so many people said, I want to mentor. They were saying, I want to give back. So we started the Mentor Project by accident, by really finding out that we're built to mentor.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. I love that. It's amazing when we start off something and we have no idea what it could grow into, and yet we believe enough to start. So that's really impressive. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's talk about the power of mentorship itself. Why do you believe mentorship is such a fundamental part of the human experience?
I once didn't know that it was, and it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't until I really started to look at our development and started to think of mentorship from the perspective of the mentor. We're all built to give back. If we don't give back, we feel useless and irrelevant, and we feel, like our lives didn't matter, that why put a footprint on the earth? There are so many movies that show this, like Scrooge in A Christmas Carol or It's a Wonderful Life. We see these played out in film and how important it is that we feel like we matter in the world. And mentorship is the way we do that. It's an actual developmental stage that we hit in midlife called generativity. We're built to want to give back so that not just for a legacy, but so that we feel like we matter, that our values that we're putting out there are important, and that they succeed us, and that if we start something, someone else can finish it, that we can change a community based on this. We could change the world based on this. So we have a need as human beings, each one of us, to feel like we're here for a reason. And mentorship is the way that we do that. And so that's really why I feel like this is a fundamental part of all of us, not just developmentally in terms of a life stage that we go through, but that we actually can use our connections to feel like we're the people that we're meant to be and doing what we're meant to be doing. And it sounds maybe like, wow, that's cliche or something like that, but it really isn't. Every single person I talk to who's a mentor can cry when they say, wow, I didn't know what an impact I made. It really hits them hard when they know that they've made a difference in the world.
Amazing. And I'm just going to build on that, right? So in your experience and in your work, what mentor and mentee relationships, transformative ones, have you seen that you can share so people can, take a cue from that?
So I'll give one that's a work example, and it won't even feel like it's mentoring. But let me give you this example because it's in the book that I wrote, but it's one that we wouldn't think of. And I hope that it illuminates how we have mentors everywhere that we just don't know. So imagine it's 2003 and the Columbia Space Shuttle is just coming down into Earth and it hits the atmosphere and it disintegrates to the horror of everyone watching. Fast forward to 2005. You're an astronaut in space and you're looking around and you're like, this is amazing. This is everything I ever thought it would be and more. This is fantastic. And then you get a call from Mission Control and they say, hey, we're not sure, but your mission might have that same problem the other one had. Well, Charlie Camarda, who's one of the mentors with the Mentor Project, was that guy who got that call in space. He was an astronaut. He couldn't open up the door and say, I'm out of here. You have to do something at that point. So he didn't know, am I going to have to call home and tell my daughter I'm not coming home? Or is this going to be fixed? So this is one of these things that we hit in our work life and in our personal life that we could come across at any moment. We need to have a problem solved, but we can't do it ourselves. Now, he didn't trust calling NASA to say, hey, I need you to help me out because they said, we're not sure. So what did he do? He had a little black book that he brought with him to space with all of the people that he knew were the top engineers that he was really friends with and trusted with his life, including the numbers of his family and everybody else. So he called somebody from space and said, hey, can you tell me, am I going to live or die? Do I have to call home or are we going to be able to fix this? What are we going to do? And as you can imagine, probably wasn't a calm call like that. But he talked with his friend and his friend said, listen, I think you have the same problem that the other mission had, and you're going to have somebody go out and do a spacewalk. Did all of the engineering stuff, looked at everything that was going on, taught Charlie what was happening. And Charlie called Mission Control and said, we have to do a spacewalk. They sent somebody out to do the spacewalk and they all returned home safely. Now, that person he called was a mentor. Most people don't think of anybody lateral as a mentor. The term mentor got hijacked by corporate America and it is not used in the way that it was originally intended, which is for us to learn from someone else. We use lateral mentoring in the workplace and in our home life all the time. So that was a workplace thing. NASA's a workplace, and his life and all of his crew members' lives were saved because of that mentor. That mentor taught him what he needed to know because he couldn't do it from the ground. It had to be done out in space. Taught him what he needed to know and worked through that. Now, another example is something so simple. How many people have ever been a student? I was a graduate student. I went out on an externship and a fellow student of mine called me. And this was in the day when cell phones were really expensive. If you called somebody, it was going to be like $10. And so I knew something was important. I picked up my phone. I said, hello. It was my fellow student. And she said, hey, and she's like whispering, I know you know how to do Kappa statistics. And I have to do it for this project at my externship. And we all worked for free at these externships, but it was for the letter that you get at the end. You want to be able to say, hey, I have this great letter. Now I can go on and get a job. She wanted to impress them. So she called me and I said, okay, I'll sit on the phone with you and I'll walk you through step by step and teach you what you need to do. And then you go do the report. So we did that. And she ended up doing the report and it was fine. Now, a million other times, I had asked another student or her for help in something I wasn't good at. That's lateral mentoring. So we often think of mentoring as being pulled, we're pulling up from some nameless, faceless person saying, pull me up a couple of rungs on the ladder. But most often, the people we trust the most are people who are next to us, that we see every day, that we know really well. And those are the ones that we trust to be able to say, I'm comfortable telling you, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? So those are two very different examples, but still mentoring in the personal life and in the work life.
Very beautiful stories that help to bring the subject of mentoring home. This is a beautiful way to look at it, and it changes our mindset around the entire concept of mentoring. And people can begin to realize that you can look around you, you can learn from anyone, I know we already sort of started a conversation on the mentor project, but we're going to deepen that conversation even further. All right. So you already sort of shared the vision behind that project and how it has grown to involve over 80 mentors and mentees across multiple countries. But now my question is, what challenges did you face in building this initiative and how did you overcome them?
Goodness. I mean, challenges still exist. It's not like they went away.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it was the first challenge was nobody believed in it. They thought that mentors are, when the whole perspective of mentoring has been, like I said, it's been hijacked. People use the term mentoring in such a way that it's not really mentoring. The term is just used loosely. People were like, nobody that's really, high level in the workplace is going to want to mentor. Nobody has time for that. They're too busy. They're too important. They're too whatever. And so I said, oh, all right, well, it'll just be all, the 10 of us that are here and we're just having a good time. And we only had $547 in the bank. So these are challenges, right? Like legit ones. Nobody's believing in us and there's no money. So what happened was we decided to really double down. All right, this will be it. We're not going to try to go for profit because that goes against what mentoring is. Mentoring is supposed to come from within and you're supposed to want to do it. And if nobody ever wants to do it, then maybe the theory doesn't work. Maybe all that past research is wrong. But let's see what's here. So first challenge was that we had no one believing in us. Then the pandemic hit and that's when the floodgates opened. And we had so many people asking to become mentors that I couldn't keep up with it. The next problem was scale. I mean, I truly wasn't sleeping. We didn't have an admin person. We didn't have anybody. We had $500 in the bank. And I was doing like all of the admin work and getting people on, all of that stuff. So that was the next challenge. So after that, we raised a little bit of money, not a lot, but enough to get a little bit of admin work, to get some platform stuff. But we really were able at that point to see, okay, the series work, the research works. We know we're doing it right. We know that this is, actually something that is legitimate. We're the first one that's a mentor-focused organization. We're out there and we're seeing that we're in, overall, we've been in 7 countries. We're seeing it works. And the mentors are all like connecting with each other and doing lateral mentoring. But the next challenge was scaling again. What do you do if you have no money and you want to scale? And we aren't charging for mentorship. So everybody kept saying, charge the mentors. And I was like, I'm not charging the mentors. Like that's exploiting the mentors. We're asking them to mentor for free and then we're going to make them pay us? No, we're not doing that. So the next hurdle was getting funding in, and that was through donations, through board support, through organizations who helped to support us. And then, finally, here we are now, and we're running pretty smoothly. But I'll say that funding tends to be the biggest hurdle for us because we now see that we can go out and do limitless amounts of things in the world. The only thing is if we want to send a mentor somewhere or we want to start a program, we have to fund it. So the challenges that I would say are the biggest are that sticking with believing in something that we had, even when everybody said no, and even when everybody said you can't operate on as little money as we had, to say, then I'm going to push it all the way to the wall and see if it'll happen. And so that's how we overcame all of those.
That is so beautiful. And I feel like there's something about believing in something enough to make it come to life. And then you put in what it takes to bring it to life, and then you start to see how much impact it is making on people. You begin to see how much people feel connected. Something people didn't know that they needed until you started. It's so powerful. And, like most people say, or like I've also come to realize, something that keeps us going in the face of challenges, which you have also alluded to, is our why, the reason why we started in the first place. It just keeps us going regardless of the challenges. And I guess that's the reason why the Mentor Project has been able to come this far and even growing by the day.
It's all based on the same principles, which I believed in, but didn't know that others would, which is, we have a lot of volunteer, and we also have a lot of people who support us in many ways. I think that a lot of people don't believe that other people will help or support, or that they want to, that they would be a burden, or that, something that they have to overcome in themselves and believe in what they're doing. That was advice somebody gave me. They said, if you don't believe in yourself enough to be able to ask someone for help, how is anybody going to believe in what you're doing? And that seems easy enough to do, but it's so, so hard to go out and do that. It feels almost like begging in a way.
Yeah.
So that's one of the hardships that I had to really, and I still struggle with and still work on now, is doing that.
So profound. And, if we round up this conversation on that note, we would be good. And, I just want people, our listeners, audience out there, I hope you heard that. You need to believe enough in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else would. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. All right. So moving on, how do you see the Mentor Project evolving in the future?
Oh, my big hope, honestly, is that if I could have my own way, it would be that I could really talk about mentorship and get the word out there, and that it would be able to be run with people who are getting paid and who are, we do have some paid people, but really build it up into a real organization that is like a multi-million-dollar organization where people are really able to get mentorship in every corner of the world. Because being able to see the impact of having somebody that you would never have an opportunity to meet, that you can be mentored for free by them, I mean, it levels the playing field all around the world. I've gotten to see it happen. Like a person with an idea and they don't know that there's any way to solve that problem, and then a mentor solves it, helps them solve it. So that's where I would love to be able to keep talking about mentorship and how important it is to connect with others, and also to have somebody, really taking the helm of the Mentor Project and turning it into something that's like a really enormous company.
It's beautiful. I think in pictures, right? So while you were speaking, I started to envision that world of interconnectivity where, just everything you said, and I imagine how beautiful that would be. And you have my support on this. I don't know if that counts for anything. I believe so much in this, and I feel like it holds so much power to change the world and make a difference. So see this going beyond your own imagination and touching the hands of the earth, reaching a lot of people in different places across Africa, Europe, different places that you never ever thought. Thank you so much for starting such an amazing initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for believing in it.
I love it. Yeah. You work with mentors and mentees from diverse generations. What lessons have you seen exchanged across these generational divides?
So I've learned that age doesn't matter and generations don't matter. I can't tell you how often I've heard, well, reverse mentoring. Kids can teach older people how to do tech. I'm so tired of hearing of that. That is not always mentoring, because I know, that a lot of kids don't want to teach older people tech, and it's more of a burden. And the people who are older are tech savvy. What really I have been able to see intergenerationally is that people will start to work and they will try to solve big problems across a board. And it doesn't matter about age. Tech is not a part of it. It isn't like one person is like, oh, I'm not smart enough in this area. It is that I have been able to see, we have an innovation lab and we've done hackathons. And our mentors with different backgrounds, very different backgrounds, have come together and they've been able to work together to solve problems. So in terms of intergenerational, there were the hackathons that happened. Students as young as 14 from different countries were working on projects and the mentors were helping them. So one 14-year-old girl, she was written up in Forbes, had an idea with her team, but she had this really amazing idea. And it was a hackathon that was done during COVID. Her team, which was kids from the US and kids from Argentina, were working together. And she had a really cool cybersecurity idea. And the mentors that were there were then working with her. It was her idea, not theirs. But then they started working with her on it. They were able to take this to places and try to get it out there and try to move it forward. She ended up getting written up in Forbes. This person that had the idea was not a science person. She wasn't a tech person. She was like a liberal arts kid in Argentina who was able to come up with some new way of thinking for herself that got everybody from all generations thinking in a new way. And that to me was beautiful because we did not expect that. It was just, it turned us all kind of on our heads in a different direction.
That's really beautiful. It's generational divide. That's a really beautiful way to explain that. Thank you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the organizations now. How do you think organizations can foster better mentorship between experienced professionals and younger talents? I know the questions are kind of interrelated.
I think that I'm going to define mentorship because I think this will help with how it can be done, because mentorship should be approached the same way we approach making friends, right? I mean, it's different than having a friend, but it should be approached the same way. If you're assigned a friend, that's a little awkward. If you have an expectation of a friend, that's a little awkward. So here's how it's really defined. The first part of it is, and this helps with getting mentoring programs in organizations. So if you start with generativity, a person has to want to give back. So you have to have a mentor who says, I feel compelled to give back. And it has to be what they want to give back. Maybe I know something and you say, hey, I want that information from you, but I don't feel like giving that. That's not going to make for a good mentoring relationship. And likewise, the person that's needing the help, the mentee, has to want what the mentor is giving. There's oftentimes a mismatch across all sorts of places. It's often driven by the mentee who says, I want this. And then they go and try to pluck that from a mentor. And not all mentors maybe want to give that, right? So that has to be there. And the next thing is, and I really want to emphasize that this should be driven by the mentor, because as a mentee, I can't tell you how many times I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think I want something, and then I come to find out maybe I wanted something else. I just didn't know it was there. A mentor can tell you that. Here, look here, I'm going to help you. The second thing is it has to be intrinsically motivated. So if a person is told you better mentor, you're going to be assigned some people as part of your job. That feels like a burden, and it should come internally from a person wanting to help. Just like that Charlie example. No one had to beg that guy to help him. He was like, I'll help you. I want to. Like I did with my friend who was at her job. So here's how that looks. If I love to read or I love to do things, nobody has to pay me to do it. If I love to mentor and give back to people, nobody has to tell me to do it. But if I were to say to you, hey, Ola, would you like to go into a soup kitchen to deliver food and beverages to hungry, thirsty people? You might say, yeah, and I feel good about that. But if I said, you know what, instead of going to the soup kitchen, I want you to go do that same thing at Starbucks for free. You're probably going to say, no, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to volunteer my time at Starbucks, even though you're giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people. That is exactly what happens in the workplace, is they feel like they're at Starbucks and not the soup kitchen. And that's what we want to keep, is that soup kitchen feeling, the feeling of I just changed somebody's life maybe for the better and I feel good about myself. The next thing is that you have to have a meaningful connection. Now, we all understand this intrinsically because we don't make friends with every single person that walks across our path. There's to be a perfectly fine person that comes our way and they're just not our person. Does that mean it's a failure? No, that's just not our friend. Same with mentorship. We also have to trust the person. Charlie didn't trust calling his boss. He thought he could die if he did that. He called somebody else. We have to trust that who we're talking to isn't going to say, oh, if you tell me you don't know something, I'm not going to give you a good performance evaluation, or I'm not going to promote you. Likewise, if you're in finance and if you want to mentor somebody, you have to make sure they're not going to go steal your clients and run away. So trust is a big deal in the workplace and elsewhere. And finally, there has to be a goal. So with all that, if you're going to set up a mentoring program, make it as organic as possible. Some of the biggest things happen at the water cooler. If you're on Zoom and you work from home, it happens in Zoom settings. Every Friday at the Mentor Project, we have a thing called Fridays with Fred. It's where all the mentors to get together. We've had books that have come out of that, companies that have been formed out of that. It's complete lateral mentoring. People are saying, oh, you know this, you know that, help me. So it's putting people in positions like lunches. You throw a lunch, somebody can turn to their left or turn to their right and say, hey, Jim, I heard you know how to do this. Can you tell me a little bit about that? It's getting people to conferences. I can't tell you how many people have sat next to somebody and 6 months later, they're like, ooh, I remember I talked to that person and they know this, I'm going to call upon them for some advice. These kinds of things that we all disregard as not that useful end up being the big catalyst for change and mentorship in the workplace. So yes, hierarchical is great, but the biggest impact doesn't come there. It comes from all of our lateral mentors that we get organically because we trust them. It feels intrinsic. It doesn't feel like Starbucks. It feels like we're, out doing good. So that is what I would suggest to people. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, and people will be happier.
Amazing, amazing. 3 things just to wrap that up. It has to come from within, intrinsic in the first place, to make it work in organizations. The trust factor, very critical, very important. If people don't trust you, they are probably not going to hear anything that comes from you or be willing to take anything that you have to share, no matter how smart you think you are. All right. And then the last one, there has to be a goal. Why are you doing it? And I believe it has to be measurable as well, so that at the end of the day, you're able to say this, you can pinpoint specifics, that you were able to achieve. And I think that will really go a long way in helping organizations foster that, kind of community where mentorship thrives at work. All right. So for listeners interested in mentoring or finding a mentor, what are the 3 practical steps they can take to establish a meaningful mentoring relationship?
First thing you want to do is to realize that mentoring is everywhere. So just like you found a way to mentor, right? You're mentoring. Look for ways that you can be helpful. Every mentor and mentee, it's two-way street. Both are being helpful. One is, saying, I'm going to accept what you're giving me and I'm going to run with it. That's very helpful. The other is, I'm going to give you something and you can run with it. So figure out where you are in that with everyone you're meeting. So don't just look at somebody as that's, so-and-so from the, copy department, or this is somebody from that department. No, what does that person do? And how might you be useful? Are you going to be the person that helps as a mentor or as the mentee? Think of not grabbing from a nameless, faceless individual for something, but think of a small goal. So an example for this is Irene was somebody who worked at NASA. Then she went to work at IBM. She had the same amazing skill set she had before, but she didn't know the lay of the land of the new company. So she reached out to somebody 2 levels above her, and she said her only goal, her only ask was, can you give me the lay of the land here? I don't know what the departments do and how it is that it works. That led to a 4-year mentorship. So think of us, when you don't think long-term, I want to get 2 levels up. I need a mentor that's going to do that. Think of what's an ask that I need right now that would be helpful for me. What's the first step? What's the first leg? And who can help me with that? And think of everyone in terms of how you're going to connect with them. That's really it.
Amazing, amazing. The second leg to that question is, how can mentees maximize the value they get from mentorship?
The value that a mentee gets, and your mentee got this. She understood the value of what she got from you. She didn't get a tip or a trick. She got a culture change. Understand what you're being given. So if you understand that you're being given something that can be really impactful, don't think of it as an interaction. Think of it as, how deep does this go and how deep can I make this go? That is going to make you understand the mentorship that you have gotten, and it's going to make every one of your other mentoring relationships more valuable. The mentee has a lot of power there that they just don't understand. They feel like all the power is in the mentor and that they are going to just they're waiting to get some kind of information from them. But you just showed how that was very different in your example. So because your mentee, the person who was actually above you, a boss, understood that what you were giving was incredibly valuable. And it wasn't just an interaction, it was a culture change. So know that you are the holder of something very valuable.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So let's give out a little bit of inspiration to our listeners. So what do you hope that readers take away from your book, The Mentorship Edge?
I hope the readership, those who read it, will understand what mentoring really is and what it isn't, and how you can utilize it along with networking, coaching, sponsorship, all of the other advising, all of those other titles that we all jumble them together and kind of get it all mixed up, that we can tease those out and use those as launching pads for us for even better connections. So the biggest thing is to learn what mentoring is, what it isn't, all of the different examples of how mentoring just isn't job related. It's what passes on our culture and our values and our traditions, the things that it doesn't matter where you go and live in the world, you take that with you. That does not leave wherever you were. You leave your job, you still hold your culture, your value, all of those things and your traditions. So understanding how that is also impacting us. Mentorship is done by grandmas. It's in religion, whatever one you subscribe to, and it's everywhere around us. And so it helps you to find out where it is so that you can become more connected.
I think that is so powerful, so powerful. All right. So I know we already talked about this here, there, and everywhere as we've been broaching on this subject, but I just want us to contextualize it, a bit more and, just to give it a big call out so that our listeners can, find, they can take this away. So, because we speak to a lot of career professionals, people who are trying to transition at different levels in their career. So how can, mentorship help professionals like that to thrive in their careers?
So if you're a mentor, the way you can thrive is that when you have a protege or a mentee below you, that person's carrying they're carrying your values, they're carrying all of your way of thinking. That's an asset to you. That is a tremendous asset to you. So realize that for the mentor, having a mentee who is taking what you started and rolling with it and doing more with it, that helps you. That makes you secure. That makes your job really important. If you're a mentee in the workplace and you're able to take on that from somebody, you're of value to them because they need you to accept their information. Who else? They can't just go tossing it out here and there. You're an incredible value to that individual. So it's that meaningful connection that you want to make that isn't breakable. And you could have 10, 12, 50, 1, doesn't matter. But you're out there, the real thing that matters to you is that your job is much more secure when you have a connection in either direction. It's another ally. It's another person you trust. It's another meaningful connection. So think of it that way. It's very simple. It's just putting yourself out there and making sure that you're making those meaningful, trusted connections with people that you genuinely like and care about.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. I think that was self-explanatory. Thank you. All right. So we finally come to the end of our core questions, and we have 3 rapid fire questions, quick responses just to make this so end on the note of fun. That's basically what this is about. So are you ready? Awesome. All right, so let's talk about your memorable mentor. Who has been the most influential mentor in your life and why?
I have so many, but the first one that I have with my grandpa. And I was the oldest grandchild, and I used to ride around. He had a gigantic Cadillac, and he would have me sit up in the front seat with him, and I would run his errands with him. And when he drove around town, he would say, "Oh, hey, you see Mary over there? She's somebody who has had a rough life, but she put her 3 kids through college." And he would go on and on about people that I'm sure he didn't know. But at the time I was 5, I thought he knew everybody. So the main thing that he would tell me every week on our Saturday thing was, you never know what's going on in a person's life based on what you see. So he would tell me these in-depth stories about people so that I would see them as a person with a story. Well, lo and behold, I'm a psychologist. I like to see the story in every person, right? That was a big mentor, that he made me see people as a story, as a person, as complex, and as, somebody who there's good and there's bad and all of that. And that was at 5. I couldn't have explained it then, but it's so clear as day now.
Amazing. Man, that was indeed so memorable. So let's talk about your career highlights. What's the most fulfilling moment of your career so far?
I'd say that the biggest career moment for me, I remember at one point I was in research and I was building my resume and I was checking boxes, and people were saying, "You're so accomplished, you're doing so much," and I didn't feel it. Biggest success for me has been when I look at the Mentor Project and I see all of these people connected who like each other and who are giving back. And I get to actually see in real life a theory that was presented decades and decades ago that nobody really talked about, but I'm able to see it, that it actually worked. So from a researcher perspective, this isn't a research, but this is like an anthropological expedition in a way. And I get such value from that, knowing that I feel so good because it makes me feel like the world is just a playground of connections that we can all engage in. So that's the highlight of my career.
Amazing. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. That must bring you so much fulfillment, and I love it. All right. So, fun fact about you. What's a surprising hobby or interest of yours that most people wouldn't even guess?
Okay, there are two. I used to skydive, but I haven't done that in a long time. But now I play pickleball. I love pickleball. I know everybody else in the world like either loves it or they hate it. I'm one of the lovers of pickleball.
Amazing stuff. I love to skydive someday. So here's my inspiration.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I've enjoyed every bit of this conversation. All right. So, any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up on the show today?
Look to your left and look to your right. You're looking at your next mentor.
Amazing. Amazing. Look to your left, look to your right, and you're looking at the next mentor. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful way to wrap this up. All right. So, Dr. Heiser, I know that our listeners would love to connect with you, engage with you, and maybe even, join your network, the Mentor Project. So, how can they make that happen?
Sure. So you can go to mentorproject.org. And if you know of a student, we offer free mentorship to students as long as you're kindergarten through graduate school. It doesn't matter about your age. Click the Become a Mentee button and we'll get you hooked up with mentoring. If you would like to help support us in some way, I'm here with open arms. If you would like to reach me in another capacity, you can on LinkedIn or at my website, deborahheiser.com. But honestly, we're all very receptive to hearing from people who want to engage and connect.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dr. Heiser, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on mentorship and its impact on career growth and our lives generally. For those who want to learn more, you already heard about it, where you can find the Mentor Project and how you can connect with them. Please go ahead and do so, and let's all make the world a better place.